Christian parenting.
We're not here to be the hero of any story, but at the same time, we have an opportunity to change a life within our home on behalf of the Lord. And so these little pivots, they matter.
Hey, welcome back, Called to Love families. I am so grateful that you have chosen to spend your time with us today. As always, we dive into the practical, the clinical, and always the most important biblical aspects of the adoption and foster care callings. Today, though, I am so excited to bring back my dear friend, Cynthia Yanof, to the show. She's an author, podcast host, speaker, and overall just life extraordinaire. I got to tell you, she's one of my faves. She is such a light, full of joy, wisdom, and humor. If you have not listened to my past conversations with Cynthia, let me encourage you to go back because every conversation is delightful, and I'm so excited to dive into today's topic. Cynthia, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me. That was like such a sweet intro. I was like, I'd like to meet her, but instead y'all have me today. But thanks, Summer. I'm a big fan of yours. So,
oh my gosh.
Grateful.
So likewise, you're so funny. I just love it. Guys, today we're going to talk about figuring out what really matters as adoptive and foster parents, but just also as children of God. I think sometimes it's so important. We carry a lot of heaviness and a lot of weight, and we are pouring out constantly. And sometimes we just need to bring it back to the basics, but the profound of what really matters. And so I'd like to take that time and remind myself and us as a listening audience. And so, Cynthia, your new book is out this week, and it is called How'd I Miss That? Gas Pump Confessions, Drive-Through Obsessions, and Figuring Out What Really Matters. Now, if you hear that title and you're like, what in the world? Once you read the book, every bit of it makes sense, and every bit of it, like I'm already grinning because I'm referring back. I had the opportunity to read this book over the Christmas break, and I was telling Cynthia, like I would laugh, and my husband would be in the other room and he would hear me laughing out loud. And he'd go, "Are you reading that book again?" And I'd be like, "Yep." And I couldn't put it down. It just blessed me so much. And it had me laughing out loud with every chapter, but it also had me taking in some profound truths about the Lord and who we are. So, Cynthia, I told you this before we hit record, but I got to say this. You have a knack for giggles and gut punches in the same paragraph, which
I've never heard that.
It's fantastic.
Oh,
it's the best, honestly. So for our friends that may not know you guys, you need to know her. So let's begin just by having you share a little bit about your family and your ministry.
Yeah. So I, again, Cynthia Yanof. Yes, I married my husband 25 years ago. We met in law school. He catcalled me in the parking lot. You know, I'm talking about, I can't whistle, but you know that noise. He catcalled me. Class act, that guy. We somehow, he would tell you if he was here, it worked, because 25 years later, we're still married and we have 3 children. Our oldest just graduated from University of Texas, and she is headed to law school in the fall. And then our second one is at A&M University, a freshman. So if you live in Texas or close to, you know, that's a big rivalry. So it's big family fights.
Okay.
But yeah, so one that started college and one graduated from college. And then brace yourself, we have a 3rd grader. And he, our little bit, was adopted from foster care. And I like to say that I'm the only mom you guys know that I'm balancing perimenopause and math facts. And so it's not God's best. Yeah. Okay. There you go. See, it's not God's best for anybody, but here we are. And no, it is God's best. That's what the plan was. But yes, that's my family. And then I speak a lot and write a lot and really podcast a lot. I have 4 right now, that's again, not anyone's best. I know it's ridiculous, but my main one that I do is called Mesmerized, my podcast with 2 S's. And that's everything you've ever wanted to know and more. And I have a new book out. So there we are.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize you were up to 4 now. Okay. I'm going to need some updates, but that's amazing. But here's why, is because your ministry is so effective and it just ministers so beautifully to so many. So I'm excited to dive into this. We're talking about the book, How'd I Miss That? And ultimately asking the question, figuring out what really matters. So Cynthia, you open the book with the story of the Good Samaritan, and you highlight that little differences make a great deal of difference in our faith walk. And these are little differences that define our own roads from Jerusalem to Jericho. Those are your words from the book. And that really made me think of our Called to Love family, and yourself included as a foster to adopt parent. Somewhere along our journeys, the Lord opened our eyes to see, to serve, and to love kids who were not born to us. And that example truly made me think about this parable in a whole new way as I was reading the book. So I want to start there by just talking about those little differences and why it's important that we stay attuned to them in our everyday lives.
I think that when I started writing this book, there was a quote, and it doesn't really have anybody associated with it. So I now call it my own, but no, I don't. But it hit me. And the quote is this: "There's very little difference between people, but it's the little difference that makes a big difference."
Yeah.
And there's something to that, right? And I feel like the Lord just led me to your point, to the Good Samaritan, and how here you have a guy that's traveling between Jericho and Jerusalem, and a robber gets to him and beats him up, right, and leaves him for dead, basically. And then you have a Levite and a priest who walk by him and kind of cross the other side of the road and don't stop for various reasons. And then you have the Good Samaritan. And here Jesus is making, the Samaritan the hero of the story. Like, go figure. Like, that's controversial to a Jewish audience
Right.
because they hate the Samaritans, right?
Yeah.
But you look at this story and you realize that, like, the outlook was the difference maker there.
Yeah.
Because the robber, he had an outlook that he could take advantage, and the Levite and the priest, that they saw this guy as like an obstacle to be avoided. And then you have the Good Samaritan, who's like, listen, this is a neighbor worth loving. And so we have to have, if we're going to be people that have little differences that make a difference, a big difference, we have to be marked with compassion and mercy and interruptibility and risk taking and availability and intentional living and all of those things. And I know that can sound overwhelming, but it's these little pivots that inform our actions and how we look at people that we're around every day. I mean, it makes a big difference. And so I think that, to your point, this whole Good Samaritan story, it reminds us that we all have an opportunity to look at people through a lens. We can look at them as someone to be taken advantage of, someone that's in our way, someone that's disruptive, or we can look at the people around us every day, including the ones in our home, as an opportunity to love them and love them well. The Good Samaritan was the least likely candidate to be the hero of the story. You and I are flawed and broken and impatient and done at any given moment. And we're not here to be the hero of any story, but at the same time, we have an opportunity to change a life within our home on behalf of the Lord. And so these little pivots, they matter.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, everything that you're describing for us, it's uncomfortable and it's selfless. And that goes against our nature, our sin nature. And so we're trying to live out the Lord's love to others that he's already given us. And one of the things you talked about, I think is really important, that the quote in the book said, the moments that matter most are often camouflaged in untimely delays. Oh my goodness. As foster and adoptive parents, we live in the predictably unpredictable, right? I mean, we never know. We can expect untimely delays, but we still get so frustrated at them, never knowing what delay might be in store. So Cynthia, along those lines, how can we adjust our perspective and really focus to respond well in those untimely delays, knowing that they're going to come?
Right. Well, I think for me, I've had to realize that what seems most important in the moment usually isn't. And especially in parenting, usually what seems urgent isn't eternal.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I think I start the book with this. I know that I do. It's kind of the gas pump confessions. But I talk about how I was traveling to go speak at something, and it was a big opportunity in a big church in Houston, which is a couple hours from where I live in Dallas. And I was driving and had to stop and get gas, and just needed to get to this big opportunity. But I was stopping for gas, and this woman and her daughter approached me and asked for something to eat. And I was like, I don't have any money. And literally I never have a dime on me. And so they're like, no, could you run in and get us something? And so I'm like, I guess. So I go in there, and all I can think about is like, are they trying to scam me? Are they getting me away from my car because they want to steal something from me? Do they want my kidney? Like, I'm going through all of these things. Like, I'm just being honest with y'all. That's not a pretty picture of and so I get back out and I hand them the food, and they are very gracious, and they thank me and they leave. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get going. And part of the gas pump confession is that I was in such a rush to get going, guys, that I forgot to take the gas pump out of my car, and I ripped that hose completely off and drug it across the Buc-ee's parking lot. Humiliating and horrifying. Yeah. However, point of the story is, after I left that day, I was driving. I'm like, I might be late. Oh, this platform opportunity. And I realized that the Lord was saying, like, listen, I care about the platform, yeah, but I really care about your heart at the pump.
Yeah.
And what a word for me, because I feel like whether or not you actually speak on platforms, whatever you do, we all have the thing that gets the urgency. We all have whatever our, I'm air quoting, our platform is. And God cares about what we're doing at the pump. And so I have to remind myself that all the time, where I'm like, man, the most important thing is this interview I have to do, or I have a book deadline, or I have a work dinner, or my house needs a remodel, or whatever these things are. And I feel like the Lord's like, not saying those things don't matter,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he cares about my heart and the little details of every day and the things that are going to slow me down. And usually it's my youngest. It's going to slow me down and get me off track. There's going to be something that is not scripted, not on plan. And in those moments, I have to stop and say, okay, like what's going to matter more, the platform or the pump? And he's my little pump. He's the things that I've got to be ready for. I've got to love him well, even when it costs me something. And so just little reminders along the way. I miss it. I miss it all the time. Heck, I just wrote a whole book. How'd I miss that, right? So we get it wrong, but that's kind of where I land on that.
I love that. One of my favorite things about reading that, the timing, was my husband and I were just at that Buc-ee's not too long ago. And so I was picturing, we had a conference and we were driving back from Houston and we stopped there. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if you noticed this, but they have the creepiest birds at that Buc-ee's that I've ever seen in my life. Those black looking grackle, they looked like something from another world. And my husband and I were so weirded out. So I'm like picturing this story for you. And I'm like, where were the creepy birds? But that's exactly
flying over my head as I'm ripping the gas pump out of
probably
Buc-ee's.
So.
Yeah,
that made me laugh so hard. But I love what you said, that the urgent is not always eternal. Or I'm messing up that quote entirely, but just that premise of what we think is urgent is not always, valued in eternity. And so I am so guilty of that. You want to talk about things I miss, because I am very type A. I'm check that box, I'm get it done, I'm move it on to the next. And especially, think about us as foster and adoptive parents. We're filling out paperwork. We're getting to doctor's visits. We're getting stamps on all the things that need stamps. We're getting our kids to the therapies. We're doing all the different things. And so we can lose that, and we can get frustrated with our kids when really they just need us to see them. They just need soft eyes. They just need our presence. They just need a calm voice. And they just need a giggle with us. And we're trying to do all the things that we think are urgent. And so that was just a really, really great reminder for me. And we talk about confessions. That's why I love being able to have this conversation with you. And I tell on myself all the time on the show that I am just very guilty of being the all too serious kind of killjoy in my family, because I'm so type A and I'm get it done. And I'm constantly letting the weight of life's responsibilities, of managing my household, my budget. I'm kind of like you. I have like 4 jobs right now. And so I'm, and not to mention parenting 3 different children in 3 major developmental times of their lives, in terms of adolescence and all the things. And so because of this, I tend to default towards kind of the serious and the structured and this weighty approach to life. In other words, I'm no fun, and I don't laugh at myself well, and I hate to fail, even in the littlest of things. And so I'm so hard on myself when I do, but I'm like, it's the cycle of insanity, right? That I'm doing the same thing and thinking I'm going to get a different result. So I don't know if this just turned into my own personal mentoring session, or if
I'm here for it.
Right?
I'm here for it.
If y'all can relate to this, I think because you are such a master, my friend, at laughing through the imperfections and the shortcomings of life. And so what advice do you have to the type A mamas like me, who just put so much pressure on ourselves in the day-to-day?
Yeah. I wish I had this figured out, because I'm the same way, and I do feel a lot of pressure. I feel like the stakes are high in a lot of areas that I'm not sure they're as high as I think they are. Yeah. But my mom gave me some good parenting advice that I'll pass on to you. My mom told me when I had young kids, she said, if you're going to laugh about it later, you should laugh about it now. And that doesn't mean in their face. Like if my kid does something naughty, I'm like, oh, that's great. Let's do it again. No, that's not the point. But the point is in the moment, I discipline her what I need to do. But am I going to carry that around, or am I going to realize like that is going to be funny later? It just isn't at this exact moment. And how can I take things a little lighter and learn to laugh? For me, laughter is a currency. It was growing up, and it kind of still is. That's what keeps my sanity, is I have to be able to kind of be like, oh my gosh. I'll tell you a story. The other night, my little one, he has been getting out of bed a lot at night. His older siblings are now out of the house, and so he has the second floor to himself, and he thinks it's like a luxury suite over there. And so he just kind of meanders around, and so I would had it, and I was like, do not get out of your bed. And about 15 minutes later, he's screaming and crying, and I'm like, what are we doing? So I pop up there, and he's got a washcloth in his mouth, and he's screaming, and he's like, my mouth, the peppermint. I'm like, the peppermint? What are you talking about? And I go, show me. And he goes, I can't, I'll get in trouble. I'm like, well, you're already in trouble, so just show me. So he takes me into his sister's room, and he opens up to show me the peppermint. It was pepper spray.
Oh, no.
And yes, it was. And he had sprayed it in his mouth. You guys, like mouth spray kind of. Well, by the time we get there, I realized I didn't know what I was dealing with. Well, I'm in the room and I'm suddenly breathing it. And I mean, my lips are on fire. I'm coughing and choking like he is. So I'm like, come on, let's get downstairs. And so my husband hears all this hooting and hollering and he's like, what is going on? And I'm like, he maced the second floor. And he's like, what? So my husband is thankfully very level-headed. And he says, let's get him in the shower. And so he's washing him off and I'm using makeup wipes, everything to get this off of my skin.
Yes.
Well, he gets out of the shower and it was in my little boy's hair. And so when my husband was toweling it dry, it got up in my husband's face. I'm kid you not, Summer. He starts vomiting, like right there in the moment, projectile vomiting. And I'm like, what? And so I laugh about this because one, that's real life over here. But first of all, first child, I would have been on my way to the ER, right?
Oh, yeah.
Second child, I would have called poison control at a minimum. Yeah. Third child, I'm like, that's what happens when you get out of bed. Like I'm totally in full lecture mode. But I tell you this because one, I had to step back and say, am I going to laugh about this later? Yes. And I'm already, this wasn't that long ago, sadly. And I am laughing about it. But then I also think the Lord uses those moments, those little messy moments to speak into my life. If you could just be open to what the Lord is teaching you. I in that moment realized like, that's really a nod to original sin. I mean, his sister told him over and over and again, do not touch the pepper spray. Yeah. What he heard was, ooh, that must be really good because she doesn't want me to touch it. And so as soon as she's gone, I'm going to touch that, right? Yeah. And so I got to have some pretty good conversations with him about the fact that what seems like punishment is typically protection. Yeah. There's a reason. And then I had some conversations with myself that what feels like punishment when the Lord isn't doing the things I'm asking him to do, when the Lord isn't speaking into my life, he isn't orchestrating my life the way I wanted to go. What feels like punishment is often protection. And so my encouragement in a very roundabout way to answer your question is this. If you can end those moments that are tense, in those moments where you feel like you're going to lose it, where everything's off script, if you can step back, if you can figure out, is this going to matter in 6 months? Is it going to matter in a year? Will we one day laugh about it? If you can give yourself a little perspective, it goes so far. And then if you can go a step further and just say, Lord, what do you want me to know from this? What do you want me to learn? I just think it really changes how you approach the unpredictable, the unscripted moments.
Hey families, Summer here. Sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to make sure that you have subscribed. By subscribing to the Call to Love podcast, that means you will get notified with every new episode each week, and it helps me to know that you are here and a part of the Call to Love community. You can also leave my podcast a review and rate it, which helps others to find the show. This podcast is growing thanks to you, and we hope to continue reaching families who are looking for resources as they live out their own call to love. Thank you so much, and now let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that story, because honestly, as foster and adopted parents, we're always having stuff like that happen, and it's like, people ask about your life and your story, and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful. Like, listen, you wouldn't believe us if we told you what really goes on behind closed doors.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
So I love that you kind of pull back the curtain for us a little bit and you talk about that. And I love that advice that your mom gave you. And, you know, that brings me to, you talk about in the book, and you mentioned certain people in your life that have been the most pivotal to you, and your reasons why really hit home for me. And I believe that they will for our Call to Love listening family today, because again, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be this pivotal relationship, right, in our children's lives. And we feel like we fall short because we're not, trauma-informed superheroes. And so I think just going back to everything that you've just shared and putting that light spin on it, but yet so effective, like these people in your life that have come alongside you. You talk about your husband being, the stable and level-headed one. That's true in my house as well. Your mom giving this wonderful, wise advice. So what are these qualities in these people in your life that have just proven to be so pivotal for you that I think it would be helpful for us to identify those people in our lives as well?
Right. My friend Sherry says this, that she said there's different kinds of people in your life. There's the mailbox people, there's the front porch people, and there's the people that are on the couch. And so we're going to have a whole lot of people that can gather at the mailbox, obviously, proverbially speaking. Yeah. And there's less people, but there's some people on your porch, but there's only a few that really sit on the couch. And I think that's really important just as women in general. Yeah. But I think it's super, super important as foster adoptive moms, because not most people aren't walking your walk, right? And that doesn't mean the only people we allow in are the ones that are walking the walk. However, the people that sit on my couch, I'm very picky about, especially because I walk some hard roads with my little one. And it is people that love my kids like their own. It is people that love my kids when they're making stupid decisions. It is people that defend my name in rooms I'm never in. It is people that wake up at night praying over something that's really hard in my life. And I hope I'm the same for them. And that doesn't mean they're walking my road, but they at least understand that the road is hard and they're not trying to weigh in on a road they haven't walked. And they instead are just handing it over to the Lord on my behalf over and over and over. And I think that temptation, whether you're in the middle of adopting or foster care or not, but as women, the temptation is to think that friendship and community is a luxury we don't have time for. And maybe there's certain seasons when my husband travels less or my kid gets a little bit older or more regulated, or, well, it's not a luxury, you guys. I think about, and I probably said this last time I was on the podcast, but every time I think about community and friendship, I think about that story in the Bible of the 4 guys that carried the paralytic to Jesus, and they got there and they couldn't get to him. And so they carried him to the second floor and lowered him in, right? And Jesus first healed him spiritually and then physically. Now think about that as you're raising your kids. Jesus wants them spiritually healed before he wants physical healing over them. And so that we can't do. We can't control. We just offer that back to the Lord. But then Jesus says to these 4 friends, I'm healing him because of the faith of your friends. He says this to this guy. The faith of your friends made a difference. And the faith of our friends makes a difference in how we walk. We need people that are going to point us to Jesus. We need people that are going to carry our mat when we can't even get close to the door of where Jesus is because we're exhausted and we're tired. But here's the other thing, you guys. We need to be carrying mats well for people. And although we ourselves may not be paralyzed, we are spiritually paralyzed. And every day I find that I am, when I'm impatient, and I'm unkind, and when I want comfort back over my calling, right? And so it's this interchange of people that you really want to have, those people that can sit on the couch, that understand what you're walking through to some degree. But more than that, they understand your need to be brought back to Jesus. And they will do anything to carry your mat there. And then you need to be that to other people. And I think that's maybe the people that I think about in my life. And of course, that's my husband. We're in this journey together. But, in friendships too, I just try to get real picky about who's really walking next to us day in and day out.
That's so good. I love that. What a great perspective. And it's just, as you're sharing that, I'm sitting here and I'm picturing the people that God has gifted me with in my own life. And I'm just saying, thank you, Lord, because I went through the vast majority of my formative years and even into my young adult years where I did not have that. I mean, it was like mailbox maybe. But now the Lord has gifted in this season, and he's just provided in a time where I think it's needed most. And so, and talking about being that for somebody, we don't want to just be receivers. We want it to be reciprocal because we understand the value and the gift that's being offered to us. So I think that's such wise advice. And, especially as you're talking about when our kids are doing the hard things and not even necessarily having to understand all the why behind it, but they're praying for you, they're backing you, they're supporting you. And I got to tell you, Cynthia, one of my favorite chapters that you talk about in the book is where you're talking about being a namer in our children's lives. That has just stuck with me ever since I read it. And it was profound for me. And it's really simple, but I want to talk about this, what it means to be a namer and why that is so important for us as foster and adoptive parents to prioritize that in our parenting. Because to your point, crazy behaviors could easily define who we see our children as, or, that we can label the trauma, we can all the different things, but being a namer is just, talk about that. Amazing.
Yeah. Cynthia Yanof is where I first heard that. And she has a quote, and I can't even come up with a quote off the top of my head, but the gist of it is she talks about how our job is to be namers for our kids. And I would not limit that just to our own kids or our adopted kids or our foster kids. Like, we can be namers to all the kids around us. But I think in my life, what that's meant to me is sometimes I've just got to believe forward in my kids and what the Lord is going to do in their lives. And in the moment, I could decide that, well, you're just not very honest, or, you're just kind of an unhappy kid, or I can believe forward that the Lord, only he can do something mighty and miraculous. And I'm just going to start naming that. And so what I try to do, especially with my youngest when he's difficult, and I'm thinking, golly, man, you could make life so much easier if you would just just do X, Y. Instead, I just start naming it. You know what? Like, you were created by the Lord. You were kind, because you know what? He is most of the time. He has his moments, right? But you are loved. You are worthy. And I go through all of these things and try to just name who he is and who I pray that he will become, because I trust the Lord will do something mighty in his life. And here's the thing, like when we adopted JB, we went to the courthouse and his old birth certificate, they got rid of it and they gave us a new one, right? And it had his new last name and all the stuff. And so he had this new birth certificate. And since that time, when he was 2, he's now 10. Since that time, has he acted out and been ugly at times and difficult? And yes, he's done all those things. And not one time have we been like, oh man, I'm going to go to the safe and pulled out the old birth certificate because he's not living up to what we thought he was going to be. Of course not, right? He's adopted into our family. And identity, it isn't dictated by behavior.
That's so
right?
good.
Identity isn't dictated by behavior. In our relationship with the Lord, we are adopted into his family.
Right.
It is sealed. Nothing can change. And it doesn't matter how I act today. It does matter for my influence around me, right? But it doesn't matter in terms of the Lord and my relationship with him, because he already adopted me and that makes me his. And so my behavior is not indicative of my identity, and he loves me and I am adopted with a seal into his family. And the same thing for our kids, right? If they are adopted in our family, at a minimum, they're adopted into the Lord's family. And so I have to remember, just as my behavior doesn't change my status with the Lord, that their behavior doesn't change their status with the Lord or with us. And so I, in my little feeble mind, have to keep believing for it. The Lord is going to use it. He can do something mighty. He loves them. And just be a namer on their behalf. Because listen, we know this for all of our kids, for ourselves. The world will name us and it will not name us kindly. It will name us by our worst moments. You see it all over the internet. You see it in the Old Testament. What do we say about, certain women in the Bible? Oh, she was a prostitute, or, oh, doubting Thomas. Like, anybody wants to name us by our weakest moment. We have a chance to name our kids by their greatest attribute to this world, and that is being a child of God.
So good. Oh my gosh, preach, friend. That's so fantastic and such a great reminder when we're talking about remembering what truly matters. And finding our identity in Christ and pointing our children to focus on the same. I love that so much. Oh, I could talk to you all day. I cannot close out our conversation without talking about, as you're closing out the book, you talk about this yes, but mentality. And this hits home for me so much. I think it hits home for everybody on some level, because we want to be obedient. We're grateful to have our identity in Christ, but we forget because we're selfish and we're broken and we do all the things right. We want to give God our yes, but our flesh always has a but in there. And I'm going to not as, but as the conjunction, right? Not the body part. But you share personally about, your own story with JB, especially, and in your own fostering to adopt journey. So as we're kind of closing out the conversation, I just think it's so important for us to really highlight this yes, but mentality, how to recognize it and ultimately surrender it to the Lord.
Yeah. I mean, there's never, I don't think, been an occasion where the Lord has called me to something that is from him that has been like, oh, I'm totally prepared. Let's do this, right? Oh, I feel good about that. Right. I mean, foster care is not, the greatest example of me being like, what? Like, I think foster care is for like really like people that are missionaries, or they play in the handbell choir. Like, I think it's people that are more spiritual than we are. And I gave the biggest yes, but Lord, like the most reluctant yes. But man, look what he's done. Like, I see a different side of the Lord than I ever had seen before. Because when you, as a family, stand over a crib and you cry night after night and beg God to do something mighty for a child that you barely know, and you take your bio kids into CPS offices where kids have everything they own in a trash can. Right. When you go to parts of town you've been avoiding, you are not the same on the other side of it. Okay. And I have seen a side of God that if you don't show up, God, this doesn't end well. And he is faithful and he is good and he came through. And did he do it at the time I wanted or the way I expected? Absolutely not. And does that make it easy now? No. But I've seen the side of God that I wouldn't have seen before. And I always say it this way. I went into foster care scared of what it would do to our family. And I came out scared of who we would be if we hadn't done it. Mm-hmm. You are changed on the other side of doing the things. And you know what? You don't have to give the biggest, yes, I'm all in. You can give a reluctant yes. You can
Right.
give a yes, but Lord, and he will still do something mighty. I've seen him do it. My pastor says it this way. He says, the Lord moves at the pace of your next yes. And so I would just encourage you, like even a yes, but that's probably good enough. Like I've seen it, a reluctant yes. But I would also say this, I would give you a little caution. My but as a conjunction tends to be, and maybe as a body part, tends to want comfort. And mine wants to point out all the things that could go wrong. And I want to say
Absolutely.
to everyone around me, like, why aren't they doing it? Why aren't they doing the hard? It seems easier over there. I mean, everyone around me is empty nesting and I have a third grade, right? And at the end of the day, like, listen, it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's lonely at times. However, you're changed when you do the things of God, and you have this limited time from the beginning of time until the end of time. At any point, the Lord could have created you and put you in any community, any neighborhood, with any family, any kids, and he chose now. And he is not a God of chance. And if he chose now, it is with intentionality, and he had plans for you before you took one breath. And if that's the case, you don't want to miss it. And to the point of this book, like, don't miss it, like, really. And I wrote it joking, like, how did I miss it? There's nothing in this book that I wrote that you're going to be like, oh, I never knew that. I didn't know we were called to love. Oh, I didn't know generosity matters. Like, there's nothing in there that I'm going to tell you haven't heard. However, in the chaos of everyday life, it's so easy to miss it and let the mundane things take over the mission. And we don't want that. And so my hope is that you can be encouraged. It's hard. It's a hard walk. A lot of days over here as well. But man, life is short. I have this one chance to do the God ordained thing in my life, and I don't want to miss it. And I know y'all don't either. You're doing it. And so be encouraged, even in the hard, that the Lord is faithful and good, and you will know him in a different way, and you will see aspects of him you never would have gotten if you didn't take this step out.
So true. I love that, Cynthia. Thank you so much for sharing that. See, this is what I tell you. This is such a blessing. I'm so, so grateful. I got to tell y'all. Okay. The book is How'd I Miss That? Gas Pump Confessions, Drive-Thru Obsessions, and Figuring Out What Really Matters. It is out as of today. I want to encourage you to get a copy. Like I said, I could not put it down, and that's not rarely is that true for me. I will put a book down for months before I pick it back up again. This one I read in a really short amount of time. So it is so valuable. It's so encouraging. It's so life-giving. And also tune in to Cynthia's podcasts. And Cynthia, I'm going to let you tell them how they can make sure and get a copy of the book and connect with you and all the things.
All right. Well, first of all, can I just say I'm the biggest Summer fan ever, and you have encouraged me so many times in so many hard places. So I'm a big fan. Thank you for allowing me to chat with you and your people, and I could be here all day too, but we will not. So, yeah, How'd I Miss That is available all the places, Barnes & Noble, all the places, and Amazon, wherever you want to grab it. And it's got a pretty quirky cover, a girl holding a mirror with spinach in her teeth. Like, how did I miss that? So hopefully easily recognizable. And then my podcast is called Mesmerized. That's my main one. And everything I do is on, you can find me on social at Cynthia Yanof. So would love to meet up with you there. DM me anytime, guys. I would love to pray for you, pray with you, like walking the road with you every day. So any way I can help you, I'd love to.
That's amazing. Y'all, she means it. And I'm going to have all those links in today's show notes so that you can access those quickly and easily. If you have been inspired and you would like to send a follow-up message or a question about today's episode that would inspire more episodes, this podcast is here to serve you in your unique and very personal journey in adoption and foster care. So please also feel free to utilize the link in today's show notes to send a direct message to me as well. And it is just an honor to be able to sit and spend this time with you, my friend. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thanks, Summer. So fun.
Thank you so much for listening to Called to Love today. I love to hear from listeners, and so I would love to connect with you to hear your stories and answer your questions right here on the show. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, send me a direct message, or send me an email at the link in today's show notes. I pray you have been encouraged by today's episode to walk in faith and continue to embrace your own call to love. Until next time, blessings, sweet friends.